Hello, and welcome to the presentation of Wihlborgs Q2 report 2023. When people talk about the digital revolution, we know it's not here yet. Sorry for the delay. Financial costs continue up, but market rent rise as well. And our remedy for rising interest, as always, spells out strong cash flow. High activity among our tenants contributes to a quite positive picture also ahead of us. And that includes our confidence that our region continues to deliver. If life was a racetrack, we would focus on the whole shot. There will come other kind of times after this. We have prepared and have a good position on the way into the turn, but our goal is to come out even better. Let's go to our report and a summary of Q2. Rental income up 20%, operating surplus up 25%, higher financing costs balanced by increased earnings, positive net letting, stable balance sheet, continued access to liquid funds, and by that we can also continue with our investment. And the result for the first half 2023, rental income increased by 21% to 1,935 million. The operating surplus increased by 22% to 1,389 million, and income from property management amounted to 948 million. The result for the period amounts to 625 million, which corresponds to 203 Swedish krona per share, and EPRA NRV increased to 90.41 Swedish krona per share, plus 7% compared with 1 year ago, adjusted for paid dividend. A comparison of the rental income between first half 22 and first half 23. Acquisition plus 94 million, currency effect plus 27 million, indexation plus 137 million, supplementary billing increased by 48 million, and other increases from completed project, new leases, and
line unmuted
32 million. The canteens in Denmark were outsourced from the 1st of March 23, and that gives lower income but also lower cost. We have signed new leases for the quarter of 77 million, 154 million for the first half of the year, and the positive net letting for the quarter is 14 million. A high activity rather than the opposite, and we see the same signals as last quarter that customers also have done terminations, but we are quite sure that they will come back on the positive side when they have decided about their future. We see many examples of new leases in production logistics in Helsingborg, more offices in Lund, and a mix in Malmö and Copenhagen. New tenants are, for example, Carl Rast in Copenhagen, the municipality of Malmö in Malmö, together with the gaming industry and a new head office moving from the western part of Sweden. And I repeat myself from Q1, if I see any trend, it's the demand for high quality and efficiency, and no trend that clients are leaving us for others. Last quarter, we have signed leases at new records for us in Malmö, 3,600 krona per square meter. And if we look a few years ahead, we know that we will see some changes, for example, Saab leaving Malmö and moving to Lund. But we have already good discussion with a possible new tenant looking for high security building in a good location. Some of our new tenants that we have signed during Q2 on this slide, as usual, a mix of different segments, governmental tenants together with lawyers, banks, the life science sector, and combination of production logistics are especially active in a positive way. Here we have the net letting in a historical perspective, letting in light green, termination in light blue, and dark blue stacks are the net letting. Now actually 33 positive quarters in a row and only one quarter with a negative number for over 14 years. We will do everything we can to contribute like this, but always let's keep in mind that a quarter is quite a short period. Here's a list of our 10 largest tenants in alphabetic order. Trygg-Hansa is new this year. All these tenants are strong customers, and they contribute with 21% of our rental income. 7 out of 10 are governmental tenants. The rental income from public tenants is in total 24%, and they contribute to a long-term stability in our cash flow. Rental value as of 1st of July is 4,250 million per year, and rental income 3,905 million, plus 20.6%. A good part is, of course, indexation and acquisitions, but it's a good signal of growth. Growth both in volume, but also in high quality that our tenants are willing to pay for. And looking at the important like-for-like figures, comparing the same properties 1 year ago, we can see that rental value is up 10.4% and rental income is up 12.1%. So rental income again actually continues to beat our ambition to exceed index by at least a percentage point. A part in the strong figure for rental income like-for-like is higher occupancy, plus 1.5%, also a good number. Rental value is up 10.4% and rental income is up 12.1% in like-for-like. So rental income again beats our ambition to exceed index by at least 1 percentage point. And if we look into changes in market value of properties, we started the year with 55,179 million in accordance with our external valuation, which once a year evaluate 100% of the stock at the same time. We have acquisitions for 20 million, invested 933 million, changes in valuation amounts to minus 87 million, and together with currency translations of 584 million, that summarized to 56,629 million Swedish krona. As always, we have a dialogue with our external appraisers also for quarterly valuation. Important to note that the estimate of future market rents is of great importance in valuation calculations, and today there is a good support for good market rents also ahead. We started to raise the valuation yield in Q2 last year and continued in Q3 and Q4. Our market has not been very volatile in the past, and it's not currently either. Therefore, the values continue to be quite stable. The value of the portfolio has developed, as you can see on this slide, since 2005 without raising any new capital, and last year also despite higher yield expectations. But as always, valuation is a kind of calculation method with several assessment parameters. Therefore, it's interesting to measure how well we actually perform in relation to these values, and we will see that on the coming slides. These figures, the running yield, shows how we actually perform based on that calculated valuation. So not valuation yield. Maybe you can say that we actually perform better in our portfolio than our appraisers' expectations. For the whole portfolio, the occupancy rate is 93%, excluding project and land, and with an operating surplus of 2,975 million, that gives a running yield of 5.5%. This running yield was 5.1% a year ago, and the same figure 5.1% 9 months ago. It bounced up a bit around year end as a factor of high indexation, but in 12-month perspective, the running yield has grown from 5.1 to 5.5%. Good earnings capacity in relation to the value of the portfolio. In the office portfolio, the market value is now 46,832 million, and overall the occupancy rate is 94%. It's 95% in Malmö, 91% in Helsingborg, 92% in Lund, and 94% in Copenhagen. Improved numbers since a year ago. Improved occupancy rate is a joy, but we don't hesitate to create or buy vacancy when we think that is the right thing to do. It's a part of the growth strategy, and especially a strength when we see support for higher rents and customers' willingness to pay for quality. The operating surplus from offices summarized to 2,580 million and a running yield of 5.4%. The demand for logistics and production continues to be good. Occupancy 97% in Malmö, which is a very high level, 89% in Helsingborg, 98% in Lund, and 96% in Copenhagen. 92% occupancy rate as a whole, with a running yield of 6.7% and a total value of 6,798 million. And a catalogue of our value and properties in our four cities. 40% of the value is in Malmö, 22% in Helsingborg, 16% in Lund, and 22% in Copenhagen. The value in Copenhagen is also an effect from a weaker Swedish krona. The labor market in our region continues to be strong. The level of unemployment continues down, and domestic immigration to our region is positive. Danish employment continues to increase to record high levels. Since the first corona shutdown 3 years ago, more than 250,000 new jobs have now been created in Denmark. At the same time, the weak Swedish krona means that Skåne's economy is supported by the increasing number of Danes who come to Sweden's side to shop and tourist. Unlike Sweden, the Danish economy is expected to continue to grow this year. In both Sweden and Skåne, unemployment continues to fall, even among group that tends to be further from the labor market. In Skåne, the unemployment fell to 8.2% in April, and that is now the lowest number since 2009. The demand for new labor continues to be high in many industries, and we also see that passengers traffic at Kastrup Airport continues to increase, now largest airport in the Nordics, again after Gardermoen, and also other infrastructure investments increase massively in Denmark. The parties in the Danish parliament have agreed to invest around 22 billion euros in the country's infrastructure until 2035. And that is the largest Danish infrastructure plan ever, and will of course obviously benefit our entire region. No acquisition during the quarter, but 4th of July, we acquired a property in Copenhagen on the same block as we already have properties, Klädemålet, fully let to a school and with a property value of 71.5 million Danish krona. And finally, time for financial. Over to you, Arvid.
Thank you very much, Ulrika. Looking at the income statement for the second quarter isolated, you can see that our rental income amounted to 964 million, 20% up versus the same quarter a year previously. Operating surplus was 722, up 25%. And thereby the operating surplus margin amounted to almost 75%, 74.9 in the quarter. Should bear in mind, however, that during the quarter, we have accounted for the state support for electricity costs in the way that operating costs have been decreased by 20 million, but at the same time, we've also decreased rental income by 15 million, since the largest portion of such costs we pass on to tenants. So the net effect of that state electricity support is plus 5 million in the quarter. Income from property management amounted to 491 million, up 2%, despite interest costs in the quarter being 3 times as high as in Q2 2022. Excuse me. Also here, you should bear in mind that included in the income from property management are a positive effect of 20 million Swedish kronor, which is an effect for its a realized gain on a sale of a part of a property in one of our joint ventures. We have change in value of properties of -59, and Ulrika has already touched upon the driving forces behind that. Small positive value change in our derivatives portfolio, and all in all, a profit for the period of 370 million in the quarter. Looking at the balance sheet on the next slide, you could see that in a 12-month perspective, the value of our investment properties has gone up by 4.9 billion Swedish kronor. At the same time, equity has gone up by approximately 500 million, and our loans have increased by 3.6 billion in a 12-month perspective. Taking those numbers, computing key figures, we have an equity assets ratio of 39.6%, and an LTV of 50.3. Looking at the LTV, you can also note that the stronger Danish krona affects our LTV upwards by approximately 0.5 percentage points, since we have basically as large loans in Danish kroner as we have assets in Danish kroner. The interest cover ratio for the 6-month period amounts to 3.2 times. EPRA NRV stands at 90 kronor and 41 öre, which is 7% up versus the year previously, adjusted for the dividend of 3.1 kronor paid out in May. Looking at the EPRA NRV in a historical perspective, you can see on this graph on page 22, and since 2009, the annual average growth rate has been 16%, adjusted for dividends. On this slide, you can see how the financial ratios have developed in a long-term perspective. We usually show this slide in a 5-year perspective, but we thought this time it's actually interesting, given that the times are changing, to also look at this in a slightly longer perspective. So the graphs actually go back to end of 2011. You can see how interest cover ratio on the left-hand side of the slide has gone down from above 7 times to 3.7 on a rolling 12-month basis. Historically, this is not unusual levels. We've been around 3 times, as you can see, a number of years back in another interest rate environment than we have had over the past few years. But I think it's also worthwhile keeping in mind that if you go back to 2012, 13, 14, 15, our equity assets ratio was about 30%, and it's now around 40%. And our LTV was around 60%, and it's now around 50%. So we have a stable financial position going into these changing times, as we see currently. On this slide, you can see our net debt in relation to EBITDA on a rolling 12-month basis. And as over the past couple of quarters, the ratio has come down and now stands at 10.6 times. Looking at our financing situation, we have total debts of 28.5 billion Swedish kronor. 50% come from bilateral bank agreements with Nordic banks, 42% from the Danish mortgage loan system, and 8% from the bond market. Looking at the next slide, you can see how our maturities come over the coming few years. The loan maturities of 820 million in 2023 are bond loans falling due in Q3 and Q4 respectively. And given how the bond market works currently, we expect to repay those bonds as they mature. The average fixed interest period is now 2.5 years, and the average loan maturity is 6 years. Can see how the average interest rate has gone up, particularly during 2023, and that is of course an effect of STIBOR and CIBOR continuing upwards, about 50 basis points during the quarter. But it's also of course an effect of interest rate swaps maturing. Those swaps were at very favorable rates, and we've entered into new swaps at current market rates, which are significantly higher. On the next slide, you can see our interest rate sensitivity. In the graph on the left-hand side, it basically shows you that if STIBOR and CIBOR momentarily would increase by 2 percentage points, our average interest rates would momentarily move up by approximately 1.1 percentage points. And the interest cover ratio, of course, comes into increasing focus in today's environment. And looking at the situation as of end Q2, if the underlying interest rate, if STIBOR increased by 2 percentage points, the way our loan portfolio looks, we would still have an interest cover ratio above our target level of 2 times or 2.0 times. And you can stretch that even to a 5% increase in STIBOR momentarily, and our interest cover ratio would still be at 1.5 times, which is the covenant that we have in our bank agreements. On the next slide, you can see how the fixed interest period and the loan maturities have developed over the past 5-year period. And I've basically touched upon those numbers before: 2.5 years fixed interest period and 6 years in average loan maturity. And lastly, on my slides, looking at available funds, at the end of Q2, we had unutilized credit facilities plus liquid funds amounting to a bit over 2.6 billion Swedish kronor. And with that, we feel that we stand on firm ground for continuing our operations according to plan. And with that, I hand back the word to you, Ulrika.
And I will shortly mention an update on our sustainability, and then I will shorten the project part so that we can come to your questions as soon as possible. But first, an update. We continue with our certification program, adding new projects to this list. This is the certified properties this year. The forecast for the year is 80%, and our goal is that 90% of the Swedish offices will be certified until 2025. On the certification program, we are especially proud to be a part of developing the new zero carbon dioxide certification system. Here we are one of the first to get a certification according to this system for a ready building, Pulpeten 5 in Hyllie, Kvartetten. But now we also have a new pilot project in the same system with space in Lund for a laboratory building. We also continue to develop the way we measure, and we learn a lot. Very proud of really low levels of scope 3 at the Kvartetten, approximately 230 kilograms per square meters in total. And one of the things that we have learned is that it's not possible to see on the outside of a building if it's good or not so good. We have actually built that building with what you could describe as well-known and traditional technique. We have a steel structure and we have concrete slabs, and still that building will get a lower climate impact than a new modern wood building produced at a top level of what's possible. So that is good to know. You can't see on the outside what the overall product gives. We and the business must continue to learn and do even better on this case. We also continue with energy savings, another 3% reduction in energy consumption in Q2, and a part of that is continued investment in our own innovative reversible heat pump system that saves up to 40% on each building. Our largest problem with that system is what to call it. So we have decided just to call it the Janne solution after the inventor, Janne Larsson. Another important part of sustainability and ESG is, of course, social commitments. In our report, we mention a few of them, and here we mainly focus on how we can support young people to get an education or start new companies, and how to stimulate growth in young companies. We do this together with, for example, Hetch in Helsingborg for TechShip, and together with the Region Council of Skåne for Ideon Navigator Scale Up. And shortly mention on the investment, we have made some new groundbreaking ceremonies, and under the first half 2023, we have invested 933 million. Construction cost continues to improve from our point of view, and that helps us to get our calculation together with an even higher yield requirement, as we all are aware about. I go through these projects very short. It's good to know that we think that we can also fulfill our project Black Hornet at good construction cost levels. Completion for the offices end of 25, and in total at least 5.7% yield on cost. In Kunskapet 1 space are under completion in Lund. You have seen this project before. Posthornet 1 phase 2. Here we have maybe a bit of a delay as we see possibilities for a new and even better procurement for the construction phase. So maybe completion a bit later than Q4 25. We continue in Lund with Tomaten for Impact. It will be completed Q2 24. And Nederman in Helsingborg, Rausgård 21. Everything works out well. So completion in Q3 24. Huggjärnet 13. The first building is completed, and the tenants have started moving in and will continue with that until Q1 24 for the second building. And at Plåtlärdningen 15, we invest for Spring Hill, a very quick project, completion in Q4 23. And we have completed a building for Doka at Snårskogen 5, and now we have started our project for Rolko at the same property. And the last one ongoing, Sunnanå 1254, will be completed in Q1 25. Some projects from the ongoing portfolio, and we also continue, of course, with the planning for future projects. Maybe I can mention something about Börshuset. It's our goal that will be the best possible office in the first tenant is signed, and we have really good discussions with several possible tenants for the rest of the building. So I hope that this project will be that we can take a decision on it in September and possible completion in Q3 25. Good to know that we have project ready to start both on the office side, but also for logistics. And we also have possibilities for fill-in projects of different kind. And we also continue in Nyhamnen. We have a lot of possible projects there. That would be the most the best area in Malmö in the future. And we summarize Q2 again. Rental income up 20% and operating surplus up 25%. Higher financial cost balanced by increased earnings, positive net letting, and stable balance sheet. So by that, we are open for question. And sorry for the delay and some technical issues during this presentation.
Thank you. If you wish to ask a question, please dial star 5 on your telephone keypad to enter the queue. If you wish to withdraw your question, please dial star 5 again on your telephone keypad. The next question comes from Stefan Andersson from Danske Bank. Please go ahead.
Few short questions. Surplus ratio is up quite a lot, and you explained 5 million there by the energy, a net 5 million on the subsidies from on the energy side. Is there something else also supporting, or could we take some of this with us when we look into the coming few quarters as well?
If you look at the quarter isolated, you should, of course, also bear in mind that as of 1st of March, we outsourced the Danish canteen operations. Full year 22 numbers for the canteens was they produced an income of 38 million and a loss of 11 million. So of course, looking at Q2 isolated, that also makes a certain difference on the surplus ratio.
Remember, I don't really remember what you said about the canteen last time. Is there cyclicality? Is there a bigger loss? Was there a bigger loss last year in Q3 during the summer there, or?
No. My point is basically that during 2022, the Danish canteen operations were loss-making, and they were loss-making all quarters.
Right.
And
okay, good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And of course, energy costs for the rest of the year are quite hard to predict, but I think that we have them under control.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Then vacancies. I could be wrong here, but I think it's up a little bit Q on Q. I guess we talk about decimals here. That's more a mix effect than anything else, I guess, given your positive net letting.
Yes, if you look at the lease portfolio in the property table, the increase in vacancy is 0.25%, but expressed in whole figures, it moves from 94 to 93.
Yep. And on valuations there, last question here. Have you seen transactions in the market at all, or is it very slow? Do you find support there as well, or have you more had to work with the guesstimates there?
No large transaction on the Swedish side. On the Danish side, it's more stable also on the transaction side. So there's some support there. And we also see examples. Of course, we see examples on the Swedish side, maybe some forced sellers that might affect something. But we also see examples of biddings above the value we have in our books. So I think that we think that the valuation are stable.
Okay, good. Actually, one more final question. You signed some new leases here, and just curious to hear, even though I fully understand it's difficult for you to compare things here, but when you look at rents and the indexation, we had almost 11% last year, and we're looking at another 6% now. Do you see that the negotiations that you follow up with those levels?
Yes, and a bit above. As I mentioned, the highest level we have signed last quarter is at 3,600 in Malmö, and that was of course a good location and good office and good quality, but still the rents keep moving in a good direction.
Great. Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you.
The next question comes from Lars Norrby from SEB. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And hello. Just to follow up on the value changes. Very impressively, we hardly have any value changes in the quarter once again. Now, I believe you externally value all your properties at year-end. And
Correct.
If I remember correctly, in the first quarter, you did it 100% internally.
We always have dialogue with the external appraisers, and I think in this quarter we had about 20 buildings
20.
Evaluated, and is as a part of financial agreements. So, and we always have, of course, every quarter we have a good dialogue with our external appraisers. So we don't do it isolated.
So my question was really, I mean, you had 0 external in the first quarter, you had 20 here in the second quarter. Granted, you had them all externally evaluated at year-round, but like in a situation like this where there is, if anything, some market participants or quite a few are quite uncertain about property values. I'm talking about in general in the Swedish market and for that matter the Danish market. Have you considered making more external valuations quarter by quarter?
I think that the most important part of valuation is the assumption you do in the calculation method. And if we do a good and set up those assumptions together with our appraisers, so we use the same method for the calculation as they do.
And I mean, these are your best estimates right now. It's IFRS. Looking forward, I mean, just thinking about the movement we've had in interest rates and the indications on yields.
Yes, and
so
it's good.
Could you see you sailing through this whole market transition without having any material value changes?
I think it's important that we do not want to make any forecasts when it comes to future value changes, but bearing that in mind, of course you're right. The different assumptions in the valuation models are changing and will continue to change. But I think what makes us feel comfortable with the valuations that we have is really what we see on the rental market. So we see a good development of market rents supporting the valuations that we have, irrespective of some minor changes in valuation yields.
And it's also good to keep in mind that we started to increase the yield, the market yields in Q2 last year. So we have made changes on that part in Q2, Q3, and Q4. So therefore, no larger changes this quarter.
Okay. One more question, just turning to the operational numbers. Of course, very strong, very impressive. What is it? 33rd quarter in a row, positive net letting, all are close to that. Looking forward, a few other companies have made comments about the third quarter, or for that matter, the rest of the year. What are your, can you give us some signals about what you expect for the rest of the year?
I expect from us that we can continue with a positive net letting, but you never know exactly what happens and when it happens. So I think that we have, as I also mentioned, some of the terminations that has been made in Q1 and Q2. We know that these tenants likely come back with new leases, but decisions aren't made yet. So, but I think we have good support in the market. There are things happening that also are good. So it's definitely possible to do good business.
Okay, thank you. Those were my questions.
Thank you.
The next question comes from Marcus Henriksson from ABG Sundal Collier. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Ulrika and Arvid. A few questions from me. First, on the JV, you reported around 2 million in Q1, and if we adjust for the property sale, it was around 5 million plus in Q2. First question is, which property did you divest? And secondly, is 5 million a good representation of underlying run rate in your JVs?
5 million for the half year is a reasonable run rate to expect going forward. The sale that was concluded was within Hälsostaden i Ängelholm.
Thank you. Then you mentioned electricity cost. Do you think it's fair to adjust then rental income by +15 and property cost by -20 million? Then we have an NOI margin of 73.2% instead of 74.9%.
That is, of course, a relevant adjustment to make for the quarter.
Thank you. Then have you kept the 8% CPI assumption in your valuation?
No, we think that is a bit lower, but we think that the market rent gives good support for the future. If you look back, maybe at least 6 months ago, or also in Q1, there was more of questions about if the market rent really followed the indexation, and we think that the market rent has proven to have a new level, and all those things hit fixed together in the evaluation. But let's hope for a lower indexation, actually, because we think that's a good thing with more of a normal levels on that.
So if I get that correctly, you have adjusted the CPI a bit down, but that's offset by increased market rents.
Correct.
Thank you. Last question, you mentioned the Börshuset trade exchange a bit briefly. What type of investment volume are we talking about? And could you mention anything about potential for in terms of rents or yield on cost?
If it's supposed to be the best office in Malmö, I also expect the best rents there, of course, new top levels. It's a good building, but we're not allowed to add on extra areas or anything like that. But we can use the building in a better way. So therefore, we think that if the investment has some potential, the yield on cost will be good as well. But I don't have those numbers to present for you yet, but I hope to come back on that in September. But I really hope that will be a good new asset for us.
Looking forward to that. Could you remind us also what is the top rental levels in Malmö currently?
We have signed 3,600 in Q2. But that was, you know, a good level, both on the high quality and other parameters that were fitting well. So I wouldn't say that for more of a normal good office, the rents are not really there yet, but we see potentials.
Very clear. Thank you for those answers.
As a reminder, if you wish to ask a question, please dial star 5 on your telephone keypad. The next question comes from Alexander Totomanov from Green Street. Please go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you for taking my question. You mentioned Saab is leaving Malmö and is moving to Lund. Is Saab moving to one of your properties in Lund? How?
Our tenants in Malmö today, but they will move to an old building, an old project that they are fulfilling at the moment in Lund, and we expect them to move somewhere in under 2025, but not decided yet. And I think that what we see in Lund today, some extra attraction there, is a part of that. Saab is moving, and that creates an even better ground for companies to continue their growth in Lund. So as long as companies stays with their skilled staff in this region, it's really good also for the Ideon area that Saab is moving there. But of course, we have to handle the time gap, if any, on that building here in Malmö.
That's very clear. Thank you.
There are no more questions at this time, so I hand the conference back to the speakers for any closing comments.
Okay, so thank you for your patience, and we have some improvements to do on the presentation ahead of us, but otherwise we continue doing our best to see to that Wihlborgs as a company continue to deliver good.
Thank you very much, everybody. Wishing you all a great summer.
Thank you.